Toxic church environments. Over 67% of church musicians say they either don't get along with the other musicians at their church and they have to deal with a lot of church politics, or they feel like their job is threatened, like they could be fired at any time. And an even bigger percentage of them say that they're just generally unhappy overall at their churches. So in this video, I'm going to talk about why this is such a disgrace and give you 3 ways to deal with these toxic church environments as a church musician if you're in one. So a lot of musicians don't even know that they're in toxic church environments because they've gotten so used to it being toxic and the abuse that comes from it, they don't even recognize it, and it's just become a part of what they do. It's like they have this sort of Stockholm syndrome thing where they empathize with the people who abuse them. And it's really sad because most of them, if not all of them, are really unhappy and they're being taken advantage of. And it's crucially important to be able to know and recognize that you're in a situation like that. So I'm going to give you 3 ways to navigate these situations and handle them. But first, let me give you the telltale signs to know if you're in one. Number 1, if the pastor or anybody in leadership there at the church gets involved in every single detail and aspect of what you do, and they try to tell you what songs to play, how to play them, when to play them, or they ask you to give them frequent updates on small tasks that they ask you to do, or you just generally feel like you're being monitored and they're trying to control you, you're probably in a toxic church environment. Because what this means is they don't trust you. Not necessarily because of something you did or didn't do or that you did wrong or whatever, but it's because they themselves feel like they need to control everything. And this causes you as a church musician to have low confidence and low creativity, which are things that are essential to us as musicians. So being micromanaged is a surefire sign that you're in a toxic church environment. Now next, if you're unsure about exactly what your role or position there is at the church outside of the actual instrument you play or, sing or whatever, like you don't know who you're supposed to report to if you're going to be absent or late or something like that, or even if there's cliques within that team that click up and don't share information and stuff with each other and you're definitely in a toxic church environment, because what this means is that you are being denied the most crucial thing in any sort of work environment or relationship, and that is communication. So bad or poor communication or no communication at all is definitely a sign you're in a toxic church environment. Now, this next one is probably the most common sign, but one of the most common things that musicians get told when they're hired at a church, outside of that crap of when we grow, you grow, whatever on that. But one of the most common things they get told is that the pay that they're agreeing to is for the services that the church currently has. Maybe 1 or 2 extra ones here or there. But it's also really common for churches later to start adding extra services and start adding things like revivals and conferences and all of this stuff, and even asking that you travel with the pastor when he goes somewhere to speak without paying you. But if they try to make or demand that you play for these extra services without extra pay, when that wasn't what was agreed upon, then they're trying to manipulate you, and you are absolutely in a toxic church environment. Now, I got one more huge telltale sign to tell you whether or not you're in one of these toxic church situations. But right before we get to that, if you're getting value out of this video so far, or if you've gotten value out of any of my videos on this channel, I need a quick favor from you. I'm on a mission to grow this channel to 100,000 subscribers this year and make this channel the most valuable channel on YouTube for musicians just like you. And it would really help if you would go and subscribe to the channel right now, and I would really appreciate it. So one of the worst parts about these toxic church situations is that the toxic behavior and the toxic people gets pushed, and those people get supported, and those behaviors become the standard. So the people who are the most toxic and shows this type of behavior gets upheld. I remember playing for this church that brought in this bishop to do some revivals and some teaching and such. And from the moment he got there, he started wreaking havoc on everything and everybody. He started sleeping with multiple women there. He was accused of basically sexually assaulting women because when he was going around prophesying to these women, he would literally be laying his hands on them and laying his hands on their chest area and rubbing their breasts while he was doing it. And yet, despite the fact that we all saw it and witnessed it happen, these women were basically treated like it was their fault, and they continued to let this bishop do this kind of stuff and upheld him, and they even continued paying him. And this really illustrates one of the worst parts of these toxic church environments, and it's one that you really need to keep an eye out for and recognize. And that is, if the people that are the toxic people are being upheld and rewarded, you're in a toxic situation. Now, let me just say that one of the things that you may want to do if you're in one of these types of situations is simply just leave, because a lot of times that's the best option. But if you're going to stay, there are 3 crucially important things that you need to do right away. And the very first thing that you want to do if you're in one of these toxic church situations is establish clear expectations with the other musicians and the pastor and the leadership of that church. And what this means is you need to communicate exactly what your limits are and what you're comfortable and uncomfortable with in terms of like actions and behaviors there. And what this looks like is you communicating and saying things like, hey, this is what I need to do my job effectively. I need things like clear communication, or I need to be able to do my job without you looking over my shoulder every moment, or I need to be paid for these extra services that we're doing. This is going to cut down on a lot of the misunderstandings and miscommunications and all of that and get everybody on the same page. So basically what I'm saying is you need to set boundaries. Now next, and this is the one that's going to keep you out of a lot of trouble, but you need to keep and have proof of any and all communications and situations that come your way. And what I mean is you need to become a really good secretary and write down and keep notes of things like text messages, phone calls, emails, along with dates and times that they happen of all of the communications that you get. And if you really want to get smart about it, you can do what I like to do in these types of situations, and that is email those notes to all of the parties that were involved in the conversations and the communications. And what you do is in that email, you say, hey, these are the notes from our meeting or from our conversation, and these are the things that I listed that I understood that were expectations of me, and these were the things that I listed as expectations that I need. And I just wanted to be clear and make sure that everybody was clear and that we're on the same page. So basically what you want to do is what they call keeping the receipts. Now, one of the most diabolical things about these toxic church situations is the impact that these situations have on your life outside church. When you're miserable and unhappy and stressed and all of that because of the toxicity that happens at your church, it affects your relationships with other people, and it really affects how you see the world. So you really need to be intentional about not letting that crap become a part of who you are. You remember at the beginning when I said a lot of church musicians are a part of these toxic situations and they don't even know it or recognize it? Well, that happens because so many of them get wrapped up in it that it just becomes a part of who they are. And this is exactly how people become a part of cults. And the really sad part about it is that they will probably wake up years later and realize all of this, and they will be very miserable because of it. So the tip here is, if you're going to stay in these environments, make sure you always keep one foot outside of it and in reality, and focus on your own personal growth. And I mentioned that just leaving is sometimes the best option, but you really need to understand why that's the case. And that's something that I break down in this video right here. So make sure you click the screen and check it out so you know whether or not you should leave.